Hello everyone, welcome back to your channel Lawpedia. This is me Jasmine. I sincerely hope you all are doing well, and in this particular video we'll be understanding a very important legislation, that is Environment Protection Act 1986. How have I structured the video? In this video, you'll be getting certain important aspects of the act, as well as I'll be mentioning certain leading cases in the video so that you can relate both of them. Of course, you can go ahead and read those cases in detail. I'll be just stating certain important principles from the same. Let's quickly get started, starting with certain disturbing images and showing you actually why we need to protect the environment, why we need laws actually to come up and protect the environment. So now this is the very first picture that I actually took off the internet. This is the Ganga Ghat, and as you can see, it has been clearly polluted. Now the second image clearly shows the amount and the intensity of air pollution you may see in Delhi around Diwali time. Now the third picture that I've taken over here is of Yamuna. Now the picture clearly shows how Yamuna is polluted. There's actually some white foam forming in the river and coming up. Now this shows the intensity of pollution that we have caused. Further, I've included a picture of this beautiful bird sparrow, which we no more see. It's a very interesting factor that where is our little friend? I hope you all may have seen this beautiful bird while you were kids, or you may even see them now, but population of these birds have drastically reduced, and some of the aspects of the same has been due to the environment itself. The changes of the environment have led to the drastic reduction in the population of these beautiful little bird species. Now, why was this very interesting and beautiful piece of legislation known as the Environment Protection Act actually drafted? It was enacted to implement the decisions which were made at the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment held in Stockholm in 1972. So this was a very important conference that was held in the year 1972, enshrining various principles of the environment from international aspect, domestic aspect. So अगर आप देखेंगे ये एक बहुत ही important conference थी, and in order to implement its principles, in order to implement the decisions of the conference itself, the Environment Protection Act was enacted and came into force. Now, the main task was to enact a general law for the environment protection, which could be unfolded in areas of severe environmental hazards. Further, the objective was also to provide a deterrent punishment to those who inculcate in endangering the human environment, safety and health. That means the law also focused upon inculcating the aspect of punishment. Now, moving forward and understanding certain important points. These I have directly taken from the Act itself. The first point is Section 7 of the Act. Now, what does Section 7 say? Section 7 basically focuses upon persons carrying on industry operation not to allow emission or discharge of environmental pollutants in excess of the standards so prescribed. So now यहाँ पे आप एक question पूछ सकते हैं, where are these standards prescribed? I can nowhere read them in the act itself. So now for this you can read the rules prescribed along with the act itself or further prescribed after the act was enacted. So there are bunch of rules. अगर आप Environment Protection Act पढ़ेंगे 1986, you will realize that there are bunch of rules that you have to read with the act in order to properly implement. So act basically आपको एक structure देता है. It gives you a module to understand in a very concise manner कि what the environment law is all about. On the other hand, the rules will offer you the actual applicability of the law. Like they would lay down the standards, they would lay down the limits above which you may call that the pollutants is in excess. So now the second aspect is persons handling the hazardous substances to comply with the procedural safeguard. So now this is Section 8 of the Act. So I hope you're clear with Section 7, Section 8, basically stating that persons handling hazardous substances, if you handle hazardous substances, you need to comply with the procedural safeguard. Now the third aspect is power of the central government for measures to protect and improve the environment. So now the Act also empowers the central government to take certain measures as it deems necessary for the purposes of protecting as well as improving the quality of environment. इसमें क्या इंक्लूड हो सकता है? इसमें इंक्लूड हो सकता है प्लानिंग एंड एग्जीक्यूशन ऑफ अ नेशनल वाइड प्रोग्राम, laying down standards for quality of environment, laying down standards for emissions or discharge of environmental pollutants, restriction of areas in which any industry or operation may be carried out. So these are the certain broad powers that have been given to the central government. And this you can go ahead and refer section 3 of the Act. So I hope you understood. In this particular slide, we covered section 3, 7 and 8 of the Act, certain important points. Now moving forward, we'll be looking at power to take sample and procedure. So now basically understand the power to take sample and the procedure of the same. What is the procedure prescribed in the Act? Very easy it is. It is that the central government or any officer empowered by it in this behalf shall have power to take for the purposes of analysis sample of air, water, soil. So the Act is basically stating that the central government or any of the officer empowered by it in this behalf shall have the power to take the samples of these things from the area of operation of enterprise or the business. Now the second point is that the person taking the sample shall serve on the occupier or his agent or person in charge of the place a notice. So in this particular point, what the idea is, when the central government decides to take the sample from a particular establishment, the government needs to serve a notice to the occupier or his agent stating the intention to have it so analyzed. That means जब भी government would decide that the particular sample needs to be analyzed, it would serve a notice to the occupier or the agent stating the fact that we are collecting the sample and we'll analyze it for further investigations. So that's the notice factor. Now the third is sample to be collected in presence of the occupier or his agent or any person, so that the occupier or his agent knows that what the government is doing, which sample the government is collecting. Now fourth aspect is sample needs to be placed in a container which shall be marked and sealed and shall also be signed by both the person taking the sample and the occupier or his agent or any other person. So now the sample जो भी collect होगा, it needs to be signed both by the person of the government and the occupier. So needs to be signed that yes, the sample has been collected and now it's going for analysis. So now this is a basic procedure. Now another very important fact that you must note over here is if the occupier or the agent intentionally absents himself, what happens in that case? Will the government not be able to collect the sample? No, the government still can go ahead and collect the sample in those situations. So now moving forward and understanding punishment aspect. Now punishment has been prescribed in section 15 of the Act, and section 16 talks about offences by companies. So firstly, we'll be seeing section 15, then we'll look at section 16. So section 15 basically states that whoever fails to comply with or contravenes any of the provisions of the Act shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 5 years or with fine which may extend to 1 lakh rupees or with both. And next, the Act also states that 5,000 rupees will be charged for every day during which such failure or contravention continues after the conviction of the first such failure. That means, let's say you have been convicted a month ago, however, you are continuing that same contravention. That means you're continuing to violate the provisions of the Act. So now the Act prescribes that you may be charged 5,000 for every day during which you continue doing such failure or contravention of the provisions of the Act. Now moving forward, the company aspect. Now Act not only holds the individual liable, it also holds company and its agents liable if the agents know what's happening and they have a little bit of hand in it. Let's quickly see. Where any offense under this Act has been committed by a company, every person who at the time of the offense was committed was directly in charge of and was responsible to the company for the conduct of the business of the company, as well as the company shall be deemed to be guilty of the offense. So now this talks about offenses by companies, the agents also, the persons responsible or the persons in charge of the company also being held liable in case they know what's happening in the company, they are aware. So the person may not be held liable for the acts so committed when. So let's say a person M is running a company Q. So when will M not be held liable for a violation in company Q? That means जब भी the company Q violates the provisions of the Environment Protection Act, when will M not be responsible? If the offense is committed without his knowledge or if he has taken diligent care to prevent the commission of the offense. However, even in such cases, court may hold M liable because if M is part of a company, it is difficult to prove in court that he was not aware of what's actually happening. I have referred to a bunch of, let's say, 4 to 5 case laws in order to make you understand the environment law better. Again, I am stating you can go ahead and read the cases in detail because these are certain very important judgments delivered by the Supreme Court in terms of interpreting environment law. Moving forward and looking at the first case, we'll be seeing MC Mehta and others versus Union of India. This is a 1986 Supreme Court judgment. It is also famously called oleum leakage case. So now, not going into facts of the case, in this landmark judgment, principle of absolute liability was laid down by the Supreme Court of India. Court held that permission for carrying out of any hazardous industry very close to human habitation could not be given and the industry was relocated. The Honorable Court basically observed that if a hazardous or inherently dangerous activity, so इस केस में कोर्ट ने ऑब्जर्व किया if there is some activity which is inherently dangerous activity is being carried out in any premises and in cases of a release of such toxic substances any damage is caused. That means first of all आप एक dangerous activity carry कर रहे थे. Second of all, the leakage has been caused which has resulted into some damage. Such an enterprise is absolutely liable for all damages arising from that. And in cases may the enterprise will not be able to take the defense that the leak was caused due to act of God, leak was committed by the act of third party, the leak was committed by the fault of plaintiff, the leak was committed by some other causes. So in scenarios may the enterprise operating in such hazardous condition and if any damage results, the enterprise would be absolutely liable. That's what was the main factor stated out in the MC Mehta oleum leakage case of 1986. Moving forward and understanding a very important judgment, that is Rural Litigation and Entitlement Kendra Dehradun versus State of Uttar Pradesh. This is a 1987 Supreme Court judgment and इस case पे Supreme Court introduced the concept of sustainable development. It was stated that the permanent assets of the mankind are not to be exhausted in one generation. The natural resources should be used with requisite attention and care so that ecology and the environment may not be affected in any serious way. So now this is a very important factor and an important concept that forms the part of environment law of India, that is sustainable development. Basic simple terms में इसका ये मतलब होता है that we must keep in mind that our future generations also need the same resources. The resources have a limited capacity. They may exhaust in the future. जब भी you are using any resource provided by the environment, आपको हमेशा ये दिमाग में होना चाहिए that these are valuable resources that may be exhausted for your future generation if you do not use it very, very appropriately abhi. So now moving forward, I'll be looking at Indian Council for Environment Legal Action versus Union of India, a 1999 Supreme Court judgment. In this case, it was held that the financial cost of preventing or remedying damage caused by the pollution should lie with the undertaking which caused the pollution by adopting polluter pay principle. So now this is a very important principle. जब भी we'll read environment law, there would be two important principles that you would come across. First is that the polluter pays principle, and second is precautionary principle. So now polluter pay principle talks about that in case certain hazardous activities have been carried out, there may be a loss to general public, and if there is a damage caused to the general public, who will be responsible? You will be responsible directly. That means the one who pollutes pays, the one who causes the damages pays, the one who causes the leakage pays. The one who is responsible for the problem actually pays for the solution. So now I hope you did understand the main principle enshrined in this particular Supreme Court judgment. Quickly moving forward and understanding this judgment, that was the Ganga Tanneries case, 1988 Supreme Court case. In this landmark case, it was observed that just like in industry, very important this factor, and very interesting and easy as well. Just as an industry which cannot pay minimum wage to its workers cannot be allowed to exist, a tannery which cannot set up a primary treatment plant cannot be permitted to continue to be in the existence. Supreme Court ने इस landmark judgment में कहा है, let's say we are opening an industry. So if I am opening an industry, I should be capable enough to pay minimum wage to my workers. If I'm not capable enough to pay, if the industry is not making enough income to pay, why am I opening the industry itself? It's a basic thing, right? Now this relates to the factor that when I'm opening a tannery, when I'm opening a certain enterprise, certain establishment, and I know that it may cause harm to the public or the environment or to the general interests of the nation, I should be responsible enough that I should set up a primary treatment plant. And if I cannot set up a treatment plant, that means, or that is equivalent to the fact that I cannot open the industry. As the Kanpur leather industry, including tanneries and leather goods manufacture, is estimated at approximately 12,000 crore. It provides direct and indirect employment to nearly 1 million people in Kanpur and Unnao district. The cluster is estimated to generate rupees 6,000 crore worth of export to the Gulf, Europe, China, Iran, etc. So now moving forward and understanding Article 21 and environment. I've already stated in the video, right to a pollution-free environment, a healthy environment also forms a crucial part of Article 21 of the Constitution. यहाँ पे I have just stated a few of the cases about the same. So in Subhash Kumar versus State of Bihar, a 1990 case, Honorable Supreme Court has held that right to life under Article 21 includes right to enjoyment of pollution-free water and air. Further, in P.A. Jacob versus Superintendent of Police 1993 case, the court has held that subjecting an unwilling person to disastrous level of noise pollution would amount to infringement of the fundamental right of an individual under Article 21 of the Constitution. Now we come to the end of our video, and I want to end the video by a question. Let's discuss it in the comment section. So the question is, if the development and growth are inevitable, will environment laws be compromised? So this is a question for you, that if we are focusing on development and growth, if we are saying development, if we are saying urbanization, growth, industries, exploiting new areas are inevitable, are important, will environment laws of India be compromised? Will such legislations be formulated that actually compromise the environment law of India? So that's a point of thought for you for this particular video. And with this we come to the end of our video. I hope you could understand something about the environment law aspect of India. I would really appreciate if you will let me know in the comment section down below how the video was, and any of your doubts pertaining to the environment law, please put them down in the comment section down below. Every day is a good day to learn, and until the next video, as we always say, stay home, stay safe, and keep learning.